Welcome to this episode of Health by Dr. House. Today I'm going to be talking about a subject that has become a lot more popular over the last few years, prepping. So what is prepping? It's not necessarily living in a bunker with tons of dry food and lots of ammunition and guns, although it can be. In its simplest form, prepping is taking whatever action is necessary to adapt to the changes that life throws at it. It's understanding that life is not static. Things change, and oftentimes those changes can be undesirable and they can be sudden. And so prepping is preparing for those changes. And when you think about it, all of us prep at least somewhat. For instance, if you own a vehicle, you have insurance on it. Most of us have health insurance, or maybe we have a savings account. None of those things would we typically think of as prepping, but yet they are, because we're preparing for unlikely events that could happen in the future. Here are some of the things that I'm referring to when I talk about changes that life can throw at us. Fires, riots, pandemics, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, economic collapse, climate change, the list goes on and on. So who should prep? And it's actually anyone who doesn't want to be a victim. So any person of any age, sex, race, socioeconomic status, no matter where you live, it doesn't matter. If you want to be prepared for the crazy things that life can throw at you, then you should be a prepper. When you think about those situations that I just described, how does a person prepare for that? Well, every person's situation is unique, and that's going to be the biggest factor. But it also depends on which one of those things, or all of them, that you're trying to prepare for. At the very least, every person should have a bug-out bag. Now, a bug-out bag is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bag of stuff that you can grab and run with whenever you need to get out quick. A bug-out bag is for immediate situations, and it should contain everything that you might need that you don't want to leave behind if you've got to go fast. So, for instance, it should have all of your important papers in it, like your passport or your insurance documents or your birth certificates. It should have some cash. I don't recommend more than $100. You certainly don't want to be more of a target, but during some situations, ATMs may not be functioning, and so you need to have some cash. It should have any medications that you take regularly. It should have clothing, a rudimentary first aid kit, and anything else that you might need in order to survive for 24 hours, 48 hours, in any given situation. Now, every person's bug-out bag is going to be different, so you can go online and find lots of different examples and lots of lists of bug-out bags. But remember, every person in your household should have one. So that's a bug-out bag. But what about for the longer-term events where you're perhaps staying home? Some of the things that you should be doing right now are stocking up on food. Non-perishable food, of course, but also should be things that you at least like. So if you don't like Spam, then don't buy 100 cans of Spam. But stock up on food, and it can be a little bit at a time. Just go to the grocery store next time you're going, get an extra can of beans or an extra can of tuna or whatever it may be. Things that you can put on your shelf and keep around for a while. You should stock up on things that are supplies. For instance, during this pandemic that we're in right now, toilet paper of all things became in short supply. So you should have that kind of stuff as much as you can store. You should have those things stored up. Medications I've mentioned. Talk to your doctor about that. Some medications are not easy to get in larger supply, but talk to your doctor, see if he or she will work with you on that. Have tools that don't require electricity, and learn how to fix stuff. If you have a tool and it breaks, if you don't know how to fix it, it's worthless, right? And in this day and age, we just simply get on Amazon, or we go to Walmart or whatever, and we get us another one. But that may not always be available. Having books is a great thing to do. As you can see behind me, I've got lots of books that I've gathered over the years, and I use those to educate myself on how to fix stuff, how to grow my own food, how to treat things without medications, just everything I could think of. Which herbs I can find growing in my front yard, or which plants can I eat out in the forest. The internet is not always going to be available. And so having books will help you to find information when you need it. You might want to have a weapon. Now let's talk just a little bit about weapons. Now I live in the country, and I have most of my life. And so it's not uncommon at all to have guns and other types of weapons when you live in the country. There are more weapons here in the United States than there are people, more ammunition. I think you could shoot everybody 100 times. So there's plenty of guns around. But you may want a gun, or you may want a crossbow or knives, but you ought to have a weapon. Now, keep in mind that when you have a weapon and you're in a tense situation, having that weapon, while it's great for protection, can also escalate a confrontation. So if you have a gun and the other person has a gun, they're more likely to use it because you have your gun. So keep that in mind as well. The ultimate prepper is someone who alters their lifestyle. So for me, as I mentioned, I grew up in the country, and so it was a pretty easy switch for me to move from a city back out to a farm. So I bought a farm, I raised goats, I raised chickens, I have a garden, I have an orchard, and I try to make that my lifestyle, even though I still have a full-time career. But there are some disadvantages to that. For instance, I'm kind of stuck here. I can't move easily. If I wanted to move somewhere else, say that climate change was getting really severe in my area and I felt like I needed to move, I'd have to sell it. And I put a lot of money and time and energy into making this place the place that I want to live. So that's a disadvantage. And the larger a place is, the harder it is to defend. So there's that. So it's not necessarily the right choice for every person. But as you're assessing your situation, if you decide that you're going to move, then you need to take time and think about it. Think about where you're going to move to. Is it going to be a place that you can defend easily? Is it a place that you're going to want to spend the rest of your life in? Is it subject to earthquakes or floods or hurricanes or tornadoes? All of those kind of things you need to take into account. There are innumerable ways to prep. There is no one right way. It depends on your situation and your needs. But no prepping happens without taking that first step. So you have to get started. So take a weekend and just sit down and maybe have the other members of your household get involved and say, hey, let's turn this into something fun. It's a serious subject, but let's turn it into fun. Let's look at everything that we do all day long and see if we could do it if we didn't have electricity, or if we didn't have power tools, or if we didn't have the internet available. How would we do these things? And then make a list. That gives you an idea of where to start. I hope you enjoyed today's topic on prepping. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. If you have comments or questions, if you'll put those below, I'll be happy to answer those. Good luck, and I'll see you next time.